Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Twitch chat of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome back to Hearts Around for the New Order Last Days of Europe, Dreams of Federation. Now, last video, we finally finished up on all the reform stuff, and now it's time to turn our eyes to the east before we head back west. We have the issue of Vladivostok. When the old Soviet Union collapsed, the Japanese Empire was swift in seizing the city of Vladivostok and portions of the Far East from a collapsing Soviet government. At the time, the Russian people were powerless to stop the Imperial Army from marching into their lands. To most, including many Russians, Vladivostok would seem out of reach forever. Until now. With the Russian Federation united and stronger than ever, the President feels that the time has finally come to turn the attention of the nation back towards the east and address the issue of our occupied Far Eastern lands. There we go. Pakistan lose a war to Afghan. I don't know exactly what that is or how that works. All I know is that it's time for the Falcons' proposal. Shit. I'm getting tired. I'm kind of tired. But, I'm not getting no fucking sleep until we liberate Russia. Shukhin drummed his hands on the table impatiently as he waited for Pushkin to arrive. The Russian Federation reformed and prepared for what's ahead. Vasily felt the nation was finally ready to address the matter of Vladivostok, a city built by Russian hands, stolen away by the Japanese during the collapse of the former Soviet Union. Could he do it? Could he pull off a negotiation with a superpower? His popularity would skyrocket if he could retake their Far Eastern lands, but if he were to fail in the endeavor? The increasingly anxious president ran a hand through his hair, sifting through the possibilities in his head. Right on crew, Pushkin had entered his office. Acknowledging the ace's presence with a nod, the writer gestured to the empty seat for Pushkin to write. Take. You know why I call you, Alexander. We can't ignore Vladivostok. Falcon nodded, placing several files on his desk. I've spoken with some of my colleagues, and we've come up with some proposals in dealing with Japanese. He explained as Shukhin took a folder and opened it. Most of our solutions involve a Japanese-leaning economic treaty that would last for the next couple of years. We could allow their Zaibitsus to set up shop in Shida and Magadan for resources so we can get investments from them to help develop Far East in addition to Vladivostok. Alternatively, we could offer them support through the current oil crisis. Shukhin nodded, grabbing the folder that covered that option. The idea is to make the Japanese see us as equals, as well as giving them a deal they can't refuse. This one gives them a deal they literally can't reject, and to the outside world it will look like Japan, a global superpower, is on their hands and knees, begging us for oil. The writer smiled as he set the file on his desk. The Lord of the Far East shall be ours once again. Let's go ahead and contact the Russian partisans first. For decades, Russian partisans in Manchuria, particularly the Burobiskan Oblast, have fought tirelessly and valiantly against their Japanese pressures in their long effort for freedom. With the reunification of Russia, their efforts have only intensified as they now fight to rejoin their motherland. With the Federation now aiming to retake the occupied city of Vladivostok, perhaps now would be the perfect time to reach out to these partisan groups and better coordinate and supply their efforts against the Manchurian Japanese authorities in the region. Time to yeet out anime land. There we go. See, you get it. Kev gets it, guys. Yeah. And I'll just... work on stealth technology. I don't even know if that does much of anything, but let's... It sounds neat. Dmitri slowly approached an isolated shack located deep in the forests of Beijing, just north of the city of the same name. For some investigating and advanced questioning, he learned that the former resistance leader lived here. Halt! Not one step further. Dimitri searched around the forest before his eyes settled on an old man standing afar with a rifle in his hand. You're the one roughing people up to seeking to find me? I am. My name is Dmitry Ivanov. Sluzhika Besopashniki. Here on behalf of President Shukshin. I'm here to see you, Peter. Dmitri replied, hands raised to show he meant no harm. Peter lowered his rifle as he eyed Dmitri. I've heard of you. You've done plenty of bad things. Russia's monster. Tell me, what brings you here? President Shukshin wants you to rally your old comrades in arms. Cause as much chaos as you can. The president aims to retake Bureau Bazan, and he believes that restarting the resistance will make for Japanese more open negotiation with Federation. Dmitri explained, finally lowering his hands. President Shukshin is so fixated on Moscow these days. I must admit I'm surprised that he's even interested in Bureau Bazan. When Peter turned away from Dmitri, thinking to himself for a moment, when Russia shattered, resistance had been left to fend for themselves before the Japanese finally broke them in Khabarovsk. Now, the president of his homeland wants him to jump into the fray. He lost many of his brothers and sisters in arms in their impossible mission to free the Amur Basin from Japanese rule. It amounted to nothing. But that was without a strong Russia to support them. Perhaps this time there would finally be a chance to succeed. Maybe there's a chance that he can finally do what he had always wanted to do. Liberate his fellow Russians. Peter sighed as he turned around and faced Dmitri. Consider the Russian resistance reborn. There we go. Let's do that. I guess that too. Let's tell them to raise hell. The partisans in Outer Manchuria have been rallied behind the Russian Federation and prepared to fight hard to rejoin their motherland. In Khabarovsk and Vladivostok, rebels under the guidance of our agents of the Sluzhba Besopasnovsky are ready to raid Imperial military facilities. If all the pieces now in order, Shukshin is ready to give the order. Give him hell, boys. If you need to save scum, I don't think any of us will be annoyed as long as you get Vladivostok. True. I'll keep that in mind. Well, Japan is... I think they're kind of busy. I think they might be busy. I don't even know anymore. To Peter, redacted. Your force has been equipped sufficiently for task ahead. With negotiations with Far East approaching, the time has come to cause as much chaos as your partisans can against Japanese and Manchurian military personnel. You are ordered to raid Japanese military bases, sabotage railways, and create unrest among the general population. Notice, you are under no circumstance permitted to intentionally harm any unarmed civilian you may come across during your assignment. Our target is strictly military, not civilian. If you or any of your members of your organization intentionally break these guidelines, I will personally handle the problem. From redacted. Unleash the chaos and give your occupiers hell once more. Okay, let's ask old Glenny Boy. The United States of America. Ever since the Second West Russian War, the Americans have been there to help the Russian people in their time of need. For decades, they have stood as a beacon of hope and tyranny in a world strife with tyranny and oppression. Russia and America share much in common, a commitment to democracy and a shared enemy in both Japan and Germany. The Americans know what it's like to have a part of your land under subjugation of foreign power, to have your land ripped away by the opportunistic Japanese Empire. With the Russian Federation reestablishing its claim to Outer Manchuria, the President is calling upon America once more to support our just claims and to motivate the Japanese to return our lands to their rightful government. If only someone gave the IRA that letter, things might have been different. Ooh. Shit, man. I mean, you said it, not me. Did we claim? We have not claimed Silicon. That I yawn as I say that, so I came probably was muffled. Silicon or whatever it would be called nowadays. Kawarafuto in this. Let's do a military march in Novosibirsk. Although we do not seek conflict with the Empire of Japan, the Federation must show to them and the globe that Russia is no longer played by the weaknesses of the old Soviet Union. We are rapidly modernizing a military powerful nation, capable of going toe-to-toe with the globe's largest superpower. General Dmitry Glinka has recommended that in order to further intimidate the Japanese, we should march the all-Russian army down the streets of Novosibirsk, similar to the parades once held in the Red Square of Moscow. I don't think you can get... Hold on. Yeah, I don't think you can either. It makes sense. And Sakhalin of the Kuril Islands. Yeah, that makes sense, honestly. I mean, I know Japan still claims the islands and them and Russia still fight over it nowadays, but... So it could potentially be a point of contention in the future, I'd imagine, but right now, no. Enemy infrastructure, their resources. There we go. Shoulder to shoulder, marching proudly, their faces looking towards the presidential palace as the bands blare songs of praise to the army and their motherland. Rows of infantry hold their weapons forward, boots hitting the ground and sink in perfect formation. Lines and lines of trucks carry patriotic soldiers standing at attention, their bodies as rigid as the columns of steel beasts that follow behind them. The newest batch of Russians-made tanks rumble past, their armor shining under the sun. Uncountable amounts of artillery hug the sides of the men that haul them along as the cavalry division trots by, holding their bayonets up to the sky. Shukshin gazed upon the never-ending lines of soldiers from the balcony and felt a few emotions tug his heartstrings. Pride. Pride of the new federation he had built, now a beacon of hope in this godforsaken world, but a confidence, maybe. This parade was barely a fraction of the Federation's actual army, which had become a force capable of standing up to the armies of Japan and Germany. But above all of these emotions, uncertainty. Uncertainty about the future. When negotiations with Japan fail, could they beat back the Germans? What if they couldn't liberate Moscow? What if they... Shukshin was snapped out of his thoughts by a firm hand on his back. He looked over his shoulder and saw the concerned face of not only his cabinet, but Petrushin as well. His eyebrows raised with a look of concern in his eyes. Look below, Vasily. They're all marching for you, and you're wallowing in your depression? I believe you didn't come this far to fail. This should be one of the proudest moments of your life, so act like it. The strong man practically yelled at him. Shukshin slowly turned around, nodding. I guess you're right. You must have faith in our nation. Faith in yourself, my friend. Do you remember the oath we made all those years ago? Have you forgotten what we swore to that day we broke away from the CSR? No matter the struggles, no matter the enemies we face in the coming storm, we will free our people, no matter the cost. And I think it's time to approach him, boys. With the uncontrollable chaos erupting throughout Manchuria and the rising tension between the Federation and Co-Prosperity Spear over the disputed territory, perhaps now's the time to bury the hatchet with the Japanese and discuss the fate of Vladivostok and the Far East. Let's see how we're doing. The people are supportive of us. Inquiry support a little bit. Here we go. Hero, this world peace still technically hasn't ended because the Russian and Japanese only signed a ceasefire armistice, not a full peace treaty. Oh, okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's like how the Korean War is still technically being fought because the North and South haven't signed a peace treaty. And I think America hasn't technically signed a peace treaty either. All just ceasefires. I don't know there. Go ahead, save the game real quick here. The Biro Bezan Oblast has been the source of the partisan movement in Outer Manchuria, who've been battling the Japanese occupation of their homeland since their illegal annexation of the territory in the late 1940s. The land is a majority Russian province who wish only to return to the warm embrace of their motherland. With the return of Beros-Bazan, a large chunk of the Russian partisan movement would go with it. I'm sure they'd be happy to have it off their hands. After several weeks of chaos now in Manchuria and growing tensions between the Russian Federation and the Endai Nippon Teikoku, the Japanese have finally begun approach our government and ask that we meet in the city of Beijing to discuss the future of Outer Manchuria. For discussion, government eager to regain the occupied Far East from the Japanese, we have agreed to meet them and send our top diplomats to negotiate with Japanese. Let's begin. After weeks of partisan chaos and rising tensions between the Russian Federation and the Japanese Empire, the Japanese have finally agreed to enter negotiations with the Russian Federation over disputed territory of Outer Manchuria, with hopes of reaching a peaceful with the nuclear on power. A peaceful resolution, I'm guessing. Diplomats from the Russian Federation and the Co-Prosperity Sphere met in the Chinese city of Beijing, where the negotiations are to take place. International observers from the United States of America to the Italian Empire have also gathered in the city to observe the negotiations on behalf of their respective governments. Discussions between the Japanese and the Russians may change for the future of both Russia and Japan for many years to come. Let the negotiations begin. As many have expected, the Japanese have agreed to peacefully return to the Beros-Bazan Oblast, saying it would be in the best interest to do so. With the issue of Beros-Bazan now concluded, we are presented with two more options. We can begin negotiations here. Perhaps we could test our luck and see if we can take the city of Khabarovsk. I don't see why not. Get a cool drawing. Oh, let me check that. Let me see. That is a cool ass drawing. Good job, Mike. If you're in chat right now. Oh. Unlike Beros-Bazan, Japan is not as eager to hand over Khabarovsk. Instead propose a deal. Instead, in exchange for handing over Khabarovsk, they have asked to maintain the resource rights in Outer Manchuria and gain access to tungsten reserves in the Magadan Oblast. Honestly, I don't know, that sounds acceptable, honestly. There we go. After some negotiations, the Japanese have finally agreed to return Khabarovsk and Outer Manchuria to the Russian Federation. Diplomats have celebrated the victory. This victory, as much of what was stolen by the Japanese, would now be peacefully returning to Russia where it belongs. Now, about Vladivostok. After some thought, the Japanese diplomats have proposed the Russian Federation a compromise they find reasonable. Japan is still going through an oil crisis that has handicapped their economy for some time. In exchange for return of Vladivostok, the Japanese are asking for Siberian oil reserves, for access to Siberian oil reserves to support their economy, as well as the safe passage of the Congo residents to Manchuria. This is acceptable. Gotta wash my hands, but I'll be back. Sounds good. After days of intense silence from Japanese diplomats, the Japanese have finally announced to return the city of Vladivostok back to the Russian Federation. The news has been celebrated by our government as our nation's goals in the Far East have finally been achieved. A victory for the motherland. Which means I can take these guys. I still don't know what the hell the Congo are supposed to be. I think it's Korean. It's supposed to be, hold on, I think there's an explanation. Congo, a mingling of Korean, Manchu, and Japanese cultures in the southern provinces of Outer Manchuria. That is what that's supposed to mean, it seems. There we go. Negotiations now concluded. The time has come to sign the Treaty of Beijing. Through peaceful means, we have achieved our goals and we're taken the occupied Far East. With signing of a treaty, we'll see its reintegration into the Russian Federation. Millions across Russia have gathered onto the streets in celebration and are eagerly waiting to welcome our Russian brothers and sisters back into the warm embrace of our glorious motherland. A victory for the Russian Federation. Let's go. So we got this, which we'll just core back up. Now we have the Far East reintegration zone with Ivan Tarasov leading it. Interesting. Congo immigration. A little unfortunate. Honestly surprised that they are allowing Korean culture, any Korean culture, to be honest, considering they don't allow that to Koreans in, Korea. Yeah. Interesting point. Shit. Okay. The bane of the nation. With the issue of the Far East finally resolved, it is time to return our attention back to the West. For years, the illegitimate state of Muscovy stands as a symbol of Russia's greatest failures. Shukshin knows that there is no peaceful way for Moscow returning to the Russian Federation. If Russia is ever to be truly united and free from the forces of tyranny, President Shukshin must prepare the nation for what might very well be Russia's last war. After tense negotiations between the Japanese Empire and the Russian Federation, the two nations have met Beijing to sign a treaty that aims to resolve their territorial disputes. The treaty saw the lands of Outer Manchuria and the city of Vladivostok reintegrated into the Russian Federation. In exchange, Russia would be assured of safe passage of Congo peoples to northern Manchuria and Korea. Celebrations have occurred across the Russian Federation over the nation's diplomatic victory over the Japanese. With Vladivostok returned to Russia, the world awaits the Russian Federation's next move as they turn their attention to the west, where Germany still holds the Reichskommissariat Muscovy. Oh man. Well, the president has called Pukrishkin and all military leaders across the Federation return to Novosibirsk and convene in the war room to plan the Federation's strategy in the upcoming war against the German Reich and what preparations the All-Russian Army needs to make before we can begin the liberation of Eastern Europe from Nazi tyranny. Second war intensifies. Yep. Jesus, fuck. There's a lot of fucking focus trees. We have a whole fucking West Russian focus tree. Or for the just preparing for the war. That's what I'm trying to fucking say. I'm fucking illiterate. Ah, Borman, you're not looking too good, bud. Shukshin had gathered the others in his office for an important meeting, quite possibly the most important one in a very long time. They already decided the invasion of Germany would be the only way to reclaim Moscow, but now they had to answer another question. How? The Wehrmacht is the strongest land force on planet Earth, and although the oil crisis definitely devastated the German army, they would still be far from the morsel the Federation could just gobble up, contrary to what many of the proud officials thought. What could be Russia's final chance against the Hun, there was no room for error. Thus, Shukshin, being not much a military man himself, instructed Pukrishkin and Novikov and other officials to come up with their strategies. After shouting match and several arguments, a preparation plan had been made. Falcon called for the SP to infiltrate Muscovy and destabilize the already unstable colony. As the All-Russian Army marches west, he proclaimed, partisans will lead the way, ripping up vital infrastructure and terrorizing local garrisons, giving us the advantage in a quick offensive. I think I know urged caution. To pray for a swift victory is dangerous, and must plan accordingly for this battle of attrition. Despite the oil crisis, the panzers still remain deadly, and we all surely remember how German tanks have ripped through Russian lines twice now. We must also consider a strong defensive line where we can grind down their arms before we retaliate. With slow and steady progress, we will win this war. Without a great strategy, the Federation will be hopeless. Well, looks like we do both. Yeah. Okay. Bagration has made it clear to the president that we are to liberate our sick Moscow from the Nazi occupiers and repel them from our lands. The best course of action would be to send in the SB behind enemy lines to gather intelligence and weaken the RK Muscovian from within. How are we doing majority-wise? We are fucking great. We're not even close to losing our majority. It's time to end Eggman's whole career. You know it. You know it, baby. Next, let's go ahead. Weaken their administration. The RK hold on their territories penniless at best, often battling partisans and rebels across the nation, primarily near our border. With the right men shot dead by our agents and certain individuals going missing, their weak administration will rapidly turn to dust, breaking any illusion of control they think they have over the occupied lands of Western Russia. And there we go. And how are these guys doing? They're doing okay. How are you doing when it comes to air bases near the front? Okay, I got some decent ones coming along. Hopefully they'll be enough. I mean, I think I upgraded Samara to a 10. This is a 4. This is only 1, but I know this is a 10. Yeah, this is a 10. Then Onega has a 7. Alright. Albert Saides looked over the city of Yaroslavl. He ruled as a Reichsstatthalter of the Russian majority city following the rather surprising outcome of the West Russian War. Despite the great victories of the Reich against the Slavic hordes, it seemed like a war between the Germans and Russians was once again on the horizon. Why do they keep fighting us? Albert asked out loud. Albert would never admit this to any of his colleagues, but since the disastrous outcome of the war, the man had grown to respect the Russians and their seemingly indomitable will. While the Reich had stagnated, even falling into civil war not so long ago, the Russians were rising from the ashes of their failure. Well, when Albert first heard the news of Russian reunification, he would have thought it would have been under men like Zhukov or collaborators in Samara. He never thought that Vasily Shukshin, a man who hails from the vast rural plains of Siberia, would have brought the Russian nation back together. And yet, Albert could only watch on in surprise as this man was once unknown to the world seemingly transformed Russian culture, bringing forth ideals of liberty and democracy. Meanwhile, the Reich refused to move on from its victory in the Second World War. While Russia had learned and evolved from its many mistakes, Germany was still stuck in the past. Albert looked to the streets below, watching the Muscovites below go about their business. In recent weeks, the people he had governed seemed to be waking up. Protests were becoming more frequent, demands to rejoin their mother country becoming louder and louder. Despite the great victories of the Reich, it seemed that history was coming to correct itself. As Albert observed a Russian family walking down the street, he asked himself a question that had been on his mind more and more in recent weeks. Are they truly inferior? Well, so let's break their encryption. Cracking the Muscovy encryptions will grant the all-Russian army unlimited access to all Nazi supply lines, battling tactics and movements across Muscovy, giving superior intelligence over the enemy in the upcoming conflict against the Einheitspacht. Got a ton of fucking events. Jesus. Well, I feel pretty good about my army of 40 wits. Shit, I'm fucking tired. Want a coffee? I don't know if they have 20 sugars for you, but I can check. Fuck off. Let's try one more permutation. Then I'll see if Edgar can wrestle back some food. Did they feed you this well back in America? Kira asked. She sat down in the office chair next to Johnny and continued typing his computer. Now, the CIA never dreamed of eating potatoes 3 times a day. Who knew it would be so good for my complexion? Here I want to try another variant of the Ellis method. This time I programmed the computer to execute chosen ciphertext delta with a new orientation Maxim taught us last week. Maxime doesn't know shit, fucking Tomsky. Poor guy couldn't find his own feet if they weren't attached to him. Be polite, Kiriko. At least Maxime knows how to vote. You'd think after the shit Russia went through under the Revolutionary Front, people like you would learn not to vote for Reds. He finished inputting his commands into the whirling computer and pressed the enter key. Anyway, that'll be a few minutes. Another round of poker? Maybe Savannah can loan me some money. Oh, you think they didn't teach me how to bluff at the company? 3 hours passed in semi-boredom. Kira had scooped up another winning hand and John's lunch money when the computer whirled too hard. Shit, finally. I'll get it. She limped over to the computer monitor, expecting that the intercepted German message would be garbled mess as always. Oh, fuck. Well, what's wrong? Orders from Hauptmann Wegener. Flight of Ingvena 7 to redeploy to Novgorod airfield by 1700 hours. Wait, we fucking cracked it? Meanwhile, they are broken. The SB's final target are the officer corps in Muscovy, wiping out their most experienced and most innovative military staff will cripple their ability to effectively fight our troops on the field and completely demoralize their pitiful auxiliaries, and break their will to fight the advancing all-Russian army. Well, there we go. We're almost there, boys. We can almost start the fucking war. I'm personally looking forward to it. We got our doctrine down for that. We'll do this. Work on a bit of doctrine. I'm telling you, the RK isn't going to last very long. We need to... The German administrator was discussing in the conference room when a Wehrmacht officer strenuously opened the door.
Under orders from the Führer, our officers within this building and many across Muscovy itself are to be moved to Germany proper. This building needs to be evacuated immediately. Security breaches and partisan movements have made this place too dangerous. The members of the conference got out of their seats and headed for the door. Rise the fuck up, Siegfried, you fat fuck, before I leave you here for some Slavic beast to blow your brains out. The Wehrmacht commander commanded, banging his fist on the wall. Right, apologies. Siegfried stood, but before he got on his 2 feet, a bullet flew through the air. The officer laid in a pool of his own blood on the floor, a bullet hole straight for the back of his skull. A raggedly dressed partisan wearing a Russian tricolor on his arm entered the room, armed with a Tokarev in his hand. The door clicked, locked by the hands of another partisan outside. Dmitri lifted his pistol in the air, and his voice boomed with a smile across his face. Right. It's time to get down to business. Dmitri shouted, opening fire on the ceiling before pointing at a German bureaucrat and putting a hole between the eyes. The student men watched in horror. Dmitri slowly approached one of them. You subhuman monster, don't touch me! I will not die by the hands of a bang rang out. Who's next, huh? Dmitri asked, a smug look on his face. One of the Germans fiercely tugged on the locked door before his blood coated the handle. Slowly, the room was painted red, and Dmitri was the only person alive in the room. He looked out the door, taking a cigarette out of his pocket and opening the window to the room. He tried dusting the blood off his outfit. You got blood on my outfit, Kraut. Muscovian. Dmitri looked over the scenery. One day, this will all be Russian again. He puffed a cloud of smoke into the air. Moscow will be Russian once more.